Hey guys, it's Brian. Welcome to the Awards Contender. So, I just got back from the Sundance Film Festival. I saw 22 films, 22 movies over about a week, and I'm going to do a video where I rank all of the films I watched at Sundance. But before I get to that video, I have to talk about Kiss of the Spider-Woman, starring Jennifer Lopez and directed by Bill Condon. This was absolutely the most high-profile film of Sundance 2025. I never could score a ticket to the premiere. I tried everything. Like for 2 weeks, I was emailing publicists. I kept refreshing the ticket request page. I just kept trying to get into that screening, and I had some friends make it in, but I was kind of sad that Sunday evening, not able to see Kiss of the Spider-Woman. Thankfully, the next morning, I was able to go to a press and industry screening. I got there 90 minutes early to ensure I could see this film because there were so many things going for this. So many things that intrigued me about the new Kiss of the Spider-Woman. Like, of course, as an Oscar enthusiast, an Oscar aficionado, of course, I've seen the original Kiss of the Spider-Woman film from 1985, which earned William Hurt an Academy Award for Best Actor. And I watched that film again last night to refresh my memory of it. I hadn't seen it since probably college, and it was kind of a weird experience watching the 80s film, having now seen this 2025 musical adaptation. There are, of course, many similarities between the two movies. The big change in this newer version is that it is a musical, and it's not just the occasional singing and things. There are full-on dance numbers with the camera, whipping around the actors and, really stylized and fresh and creative. I am very happy to report that the new Kiss of the Spider-Woman, directed by Bill Condon, is a very good film. It's not perfect, it's a little rough around the edges. The second act has some sluggish pacing that, did take me out of the movie here and there, but it's got an amazing, I would say, opening half hour and an incredible ending that brought me to tears. There is a lot to really like about the new Kiss of the Spider-Woman, and I do think if this gets with the right distributor, they handled the release strategy well going into the later half of 2025, Jennifer Lopez might be coming for her first Oscar nomination. I very much believe that. There was a little awards buzz about Lopez in this movie leading up to the Sundance premiere. And I've always been a big fan of hers, and she doesn't always appear in the best projects. She got very close to an Oscar nomination for Hustlers, at the beginning of 2020. She got in almost everywhere, but she didn't secure the Oscar nomination. That still frustrates me to this day. I've talked about that on the channel before. Jennifer Lopez, I have always felt is a dynamite actress in the right project with the right material and a good director and a good cast surrounding her. Jennifer Lopez can be really, really striking, and she has such a presence about her, even in her lesser films, that I've been waiting. I don't know about you. I've been waiting to see her get a really cool, rich character that she easily slips into and just knocks out of the park. And I do think that's what she gets in the new Kiss of the Spider-Woman. Before I talk about the three main performances and all of the Oscar buzz and things moving forward, just in case you're not familiar with Kiss of the Spider-Woman, here's a brief summary of what the movie's about. I, of course, will not go into spoilers. I will not talk about what happens in the second half and the ending and everything. But I do want to give you a little background about, what is this film all about? What is the tone and things? So Kiss of the Spider-Woman started as a novel, and that book was turned into the 1985 film Kiss of the Spider-Woman, starring William Hurt and Raul Julia. It's not a musical, the 85 film. It's a talkie drama filled with emotion and some really wonderful cinematography and performances. I mean, that was one of the big, acclaimed Oscar films, I would say, of 85. Again, William Hurt won the Oscar for Best Actor. That's the only time he won the gold trophy. Watching the film again, I think Raul Julia is just as good. And he was not nominated. He never received an Oscar nomination, which is a bummer. But they have great chemistry together in the film. Their scenes in the prison cell are fantastic. And it's a great film, kind of its time. There are some things in the 85 movie where I was like, oh God, okay. That's the kind of language we're using and certain things. I mean, we've come a long way over the last 40 years, right? But then after that film, was a success and did well critically, many years later, we got the musical adaptation on stage. And now finally, so many decades since the last movie, we get this new film directed by Bill Condon, who made Dreamgirls, who made Beauty and the Beast, who made Gods and Monsters, one of my very favorite films of 1998. Bill Condon, Academy Award winner Bill Condon, has now given us a new Kiss of the Spider-Woman, and just like the 85 film, this new version tells the story of two people who share a prison cell together and how their friendship evolves over the course of the film. Diego Luna plays Valentin, a political prisoner, and he has been in the cell a lot longer than his new cellmate, Molina, who has been convicted of public indecency. Molina is played by a stunning talent, truly fantastic, named Tona Tew. And Molina is obsessed with classic Hollywood, the glamorous female stars of yesteryear. This is an Argentinian prison in 1981. So there's not much to do to pass the time. And, there are days that just kind of linger on forever. And Molina turns to art to get through the days and find joy and passion in a situation where there's not a lot of hope, right? Not a lot of good things. At first, Molina and Valentin don't really get along. Valentin doesn't know what to think about Molina, and they're a little combative at first, but even though he's a bit apprehensive about listening to Molina talk about their favorite star of old Hollywood, Ingrid Luna, who is played in the film by Jennifer Lopez, often with blonde hair and also at times with short black hair, and just some incredible costumes all the way through, representing, old school Hollywood and, a different time period. Some of her costumes are very appropriate for the time, normal kinds of things people would wear in that specific decade in the 1950s and things. But Ingrid Luna is an actress who also appeared in fantasy films, in speculative projects. And so we also get Jennifer Lopez showing up in truly fantastical costumes where you almost don't even recognize her. It's pretty stunning costume work all the way through Kiss of the Spider-Woman. That goes for the scenes with Lopez, and that also goes for the scenes in the jail cell too. The costume design work in this movie is outstanding and absolutely Oscar-worthy. And so just like the 1985 film, this classic superstar of yesteryear is really the figment of Molina's imagination. We don't get separate scenes with Ingrid, without Molina. She exists purely in their memory. And that makes this character for Jennifer Lopez so interesting because she's not the center of attention necessarily in this film. And you never quite know what version of Ingrid Luna we're going to see next. And so as the days pass quietly and slowly in this jail cell, where the cinematography is very bleak and gray and drab, if the entire movie was just in this cell, lots of dialogue and things, this movie would have been a chore to sit through. I think most people would agree with that. because we go away from the jail cell so often to get these bright, lovely, like Technicolor musical scenes with wonderful songs, with singing and dancing, with tons of color and creativity with the costumes and the cinematography and production design. Like those scenes with Lopez don't look anything like the bleaker, more dramatic scenes in the jail cell. And that back and forth, which might strike some viewers as jarring at first, really does find a rhythm after a while. And when you're getting kind of tired in that cell, and it's interesting learning about these two people and how they find things in common. And by the second half, like, they're not enemies, they're not bickering, they are finding a friendship that continues to grow. You really do realize how important Ingrid Luna, her career, all of these classic films, like the impact they have had, not just on Molina, who has seen all of them, but also on Valentine, who is kind of seeing these movies through Molina's words and stories. And one of the main, great takeaways from Kiss of the Spider Woman is that idea that in times of distress, in times of great fear and adversity, how important stories, cinema, can get you through those really horrific times. And even if there's not a clear light at the other end of the tunnel, art can make things better. And that was one of the takeaways of this movie that really sat well with me, especially at the end, which I won't give away. Like the effect Ingrid Luna had on Molina, how she changed his life for the better. Like that element of Kiss of the Spider Woman is handled beautifully in this movie. And I really took to that. I thought that was a great element of this film. So thematically, Kiss of the Spider Woman is rich in a variety of ways. The performances are really great. Diego Luna I have loved since Y Tu Mama Tambien, more than 20 years ago. Whenever he pops up in something, a film, a TV show, like Andor or something, I'm always really pleased because he's such a natural actor. And he gets a really interesting character to play in Kiss of the Spider Woman through his relationship with Molina. We get to see his insecurities, his vulnerabilities, and by the end, his will to survive. Tonatiuh is a revelation in this movie. I have never seen this actor before. I think they've been in television shows and certain things. This is quite a performance in the lead role. For this 2025 version of Kiss of the Spider Woman, I was very happy to not see a straight white man play Molina, like was the case in the 1985 film. I just think if you're going to do this story again 40 years later, it makes sense to have better representation on the screen. And so Tonatiuh was an inspired casting choice for this. A really marvelous actor, and I love how in this movie you get to see Tonatiuh play Molina in the jail cell, not at their best and, just trying to get through the days. But you also get to see Tonatiuh and Diego Luna, show up in the musical scenes with Jennifer Lopez, very stylized, different hairstyles, completely different looks. Because we're seeing the musical scenes, just through the imagination of Molina, they get to be a part of those moments as well. And so you really get to see how talented these actors are, playing very quiet, dramatic scenes, emotional beats all throughout the film in that jail cell. But you also get to see them have fun, singing and dancing and doing, lots of really cool stuff in those moments with Lopez. So yeah, Tonatiuh broke my heart at the end. I won't say what happens in the last 15 minutes, but boy, holy cow. It's a really, really great performance. I think Tonatiuh could be an awards contender. If this movie gets with the right studio and they do a good job of putting it out there and, the reviews are solid and people are seeing this movie, I do think that's possible. But even if the new Kiss of the Spider Woman isn't the giant musical blockbuster of 2025, that's not going to happen. It's going to be Wicked for good, right? Like the second Wicked movie is going to be the big musical of 2025 at the theaters. I think even if the new Kiss of the Spider-Woman isn't like a giant hit, there's going to be a lot of appreciation for it, and there's definitely going to be an Oscar campaign for Jennifer Lopez. She is such a joy to watch in this. And like I've talked about on the channel here and there throughout the years, I've always really admired her. I think she has a lot of talent. She's so great in Selena and Out of Sight and Hustlers and a variety of really interesting films of various genres. And, you know, part of me always thought if she could be in a really good musical, like maybe that could be the film that gets her an Oscar nomination. It's very early, right? It's February. You know, we got a long way to go. We'll see what happens with this film, you know, later in 2025. But right now, I do feel a sense of confidence that unless this movie just bombs and the critics hate it and, you know, it doesn't go very far, I do think Jennifer Lopez is going to have a very good shot at her first Oscar nomination. She is a total scene stealer in this movie. Whenever she is on screen, you can't look away. I mean, it's not like an overly complex character. Again, like we're seeing her through the imagination of another character. So it's not like she has a bunch of like emotional dialogue scenes or anything. Like she has actually very little dialogue in the movie. It's mostly singing when it comes to Jennifer Lopez, but she gets to play a variety of characters in the film. Some are more realistic, some are more fantasy, and all of the costumes and things. And I mean, there are at least 2 musical numbers in this film where she is singing and dancing and doing choreography where the camera's like swooping around her. And it is quite something. Like she is attacking this film and this character with everything she has. It kind of reminded me of Catherine Zeta-Jones in Chicago. How much of a force of nature she was in that movie. She won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress. I wouldn't say right now that Jennifer Lopez could necessarily win the Oscar, but I think she can get a nomination. Like if they play their cards right and the film does well enough and she gets in at the Globes and Critics' Choice and SAG and things, this feels to me more like a role that could get her an Oscar nomination than Hustlers. Hustlers, even though I really wanted to see that happen, you know, because of the subject matter of that movie and its early release date in September, I was always a little trepidatious. I was like, it's not getting in anywhere else than potentially supporting actress. Like maybe Jennifer Lopez will miss the Oscar nomination. And she did. This film, I think if it's well received, Kiss of the Spider-Woman could get into a few other categories like costume design, like sound, like maybe a top category beyond just supporting actress. I do want to make it very clear, if Jennifer Lopez got an Oscar nomination for Kiss of the Spider-Woman, it would be in supporting actress, not lead. Like she's not in enough of the movie to compete in lead. That would not make sense to me. This is a supporting performance through and through. But boy, it would be so well deserved. For one of my favorite actresses who still has never received an Oscar nomination, for years I wondered, like, could Demi Moore, like, ever get a project where she could be taken seriously by critics and awards voters and get her first Oscar nomination? It happened with The Substance. And now, all of these months out, obviously from the next Oscar ceremony and award season, I do feel pretty good at this moment that Jennifer Lopez might finally receive her first Oscar nomination for Kiss of the Spider-Woman, and that would be absolutely fantastic. Like, I am all here for it. Let's all cross our fingers. On a technical level, the new Kiss of the Spider-Woman is very well done, like with the cinematography and, you know, the costumes and production design like I talked about. You know, there are lots of scenes in that jail cell, so it's like there's only so much director Bill Condon can do to liven things up. You know, it's a lot of just, you know, 2 people talking, you know, across the room. so there's only so much they can do. What Condon really excels at is going into these musical scenes like he did in, Dreamgirls, and brighten things up and give the movie a lot of style and flash. And there's such interesting juxtaposition, like between the scenes in the jail cell and those bright, cheery musical numbers. It's not really like any other movie musical I've seen, dealing with LGBTQ issues and characters who aren't typically like the lead characters of like a big musical film. The new Kiss of the Spider-Woman has a lot going for it. I'm not giving it like a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10. To be honest, like the middle 45 minutes of the movie is pretty slow. There was a section in the jail cell where I was getting kind of bored, and I was like, okay, this movie's 2 hours and 8 minutes long. It could probably be tightened a little bit more focused, like an hour 45 maybe. I don't think it needs to be over 2 hours. I do think the length of the new Kiss of the Spider-Woman does hurt it a little bit. I do think the pacing could be stronger at times. In the final 30 minutes, I was leaning a little bit more to like a 6 out of 10, even though I was responding positively to a lot of things in the film, especially the Jennifer Lopez performance. But boy, does this film stick the landing. Like the last 15 minutes of this movie gets really emotional, beautifully done. The final musical number is a wow. And like the final scene, I was tearing up, and the movie was working really well. So well, I'll probably have to watch the movie again in the months to come, now knowing exactly how this new version ends, and like knowing that's coming, I feel like I might appreciate the movie even more the second time. So yeah, I very much recommend the new Kiss of the Spider-Woman. You should see it whenever it comes out. Like, I don't know when this movie is opening. Maybe it'll be a summer release. Maybe it will be in the fall. I think it's going to be later in 2025 because this is going to be an awards contender, and they're not going to want to bring it out too early in 2025. I could see this coming out in like October, November or something. We shall see. Again, I do think the biggest awards play for Kiss of the Spider-Woman is going to be Jennifer Lopez in Best Supporting Actress. Watch out, because I do think her first Academy Award nomination is coming. I give this film a 7 out of 10. Thanks so much for watching and subscribing, and let me know in the comments below, are you excited to see this new version of Kiss of the Spider-Woman? I'll see you next time at the Awards Contender.